Welcome to another edition of Heavy Live with Scoop B. I am Brandon Scoop B Robinson, senior writer at Heavy.com. And it's always a party whenever you got New York City family in the building. No different here as I got my main man, Rod Strickland. What's going on, Rod?
Man, I'm good. How you doing, Scoop?
Trying to make something out of nothing like always.
That's what's up. That's what's up.
What's been going on with you, pandemic-wise?
I don't know. A lot of time home. I've been. I'm now out in California with Team Ignite, the G League team with the young players. So I've been out here for almost 2 months now, or going on 2 months. So I don't know, just working, watching basketball, waiting for the NBA to come back. And, I live in a basketball world. So that's just, whatever I'm doing is probably something to do with basketball.
Rod, tell me something. Stephon Marbury has been on Heavy Live with Scoop B, New York City legend, Brooklyn, Bronx. He's coaching in China. And to me, y'all two were both the cool kids. Is there the transition? Like, what's the biggest transition from being a cool player that people know to actually being a coach? Do you feel like it's a process of you naturally get respect, or is it kind of like it's difficult because you were the cool kid that played the cool position?
Well, I don't know what you mean by the cool kid. I might need that explanation to answer the question.
Well, to me, when I look at Steph, drafted in '96, played with the cool kids, Kobe, Allen Iverson, and more hip hop,
right?
Whatever. For you, New York City, you were one of the first to really play at Oak Hill. Not the first, but you went out the box and went to Oak Hill. You went to Chicago, you played, and you just had the respect of your peers, particularly coming from the city.
Right.
When you coach these younger guys, do you feel like you have an instant connection because you played and because people think you're cool and they look at your highlights, or is there an adjustment going from player to coach?
Well, there's definitely an adjustment, and I think it's a personal adjustment. I mean, I can speak for me, just being an NBA player, probably living the lifestyle, walking into a college environment. I know I still was in NBA mode when I first got to Memphis. So I had to adjust, the professionalism, studying film, kind of seeing the game, the big picture, even though as a point guard, you have to know it all and see it all and have an understanding. As a coach, it's an even bigger picture. And it's funny because it kind of helped me understand some of my flaws, to be quite honest with you. But it was definitely an adjustment. I think the biggest thing coaching, I'll never forget John Calipari. He called us in the office, a few of us, and he basically said, listen, because I wasn't a coach on paper. So he basically said, I want y'all to watch, every time we play a game, I want y'all to watch 5 tapes of that team, and I want you to give me a scouting report. And from that day, it changed the way I saw the game. It gave me just a better perspective overall. And I think that was the beginning of me kind of turning into a coach.
Jay-Z is my favorite rapper. And when I look at him as the artist versus transitioning into the business, whether that was president of Def Jam, whether that was, branding and advising other artists, I feel like he had that extra lens. You as a point guard, you naturally are the extension of the coach on the floor. You're the quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
What did you see that when Cal sat you down, that maybe you didn't see as a point guard? Like as a point guard, you're responsible, you're the leader. But like what advantages did watching other teams give you, and what exactly did you see that kind of blew you away?
Well, no, I don't know if it's anything that blew me away. It's just expanding your knowledge of the game and thinking as a coach. And, as a point guard, obviously when I get on the court, I've studied the defense. I know where the defense is at. I know what I need to do. I know where everyone is at. But now I'm doing that, as a coach, and I'm doing that not even just on the court, but just being the leader and setting an example. And like for instance, little things like I remember we had 2 point guards, Andre Allen and Willie Kemp, and I remember Andre Allen, he was the better point guard at that time. Willie was a freshman, and every meeting and we're talking, and I felt like Cal was trying to push Willie, and I was like, well, I like Willie, but Andre is the guy. And one day I just went in his office and asked him, I asked him about it, and he basically said, we got to get we got to get Willie ready because I don't know if we're going to be able to depend on Andre because there was some things, going on. And then, we played the championship game and Andre wasn't there. You know what I mean? So just subtle things like giving me that to put in my mind that, you look at this game as a big, big picture. There's talent, but it's also basketball character, and, you're looking at things a month and 2 months and 3 months ahead. It's like if you watch Cal's teams, they always get better in that December, January period, like January. And that's because, you have that break, that Christmas break, and then it's like World War III. Like, it's like you're getting in the bunker and, you're getting ready. And, just things like that. It just taught me how to slowly, gradually develop players and a team. And, just watching him, he was so honest, like sometimes you're around this game and people are afraid to tell the truth. I've always felt like I've always appreciated that, and you don't see it much. But like right away, Cal, I'll never forget, we had Derrick Rose. There's other guys who feel like, they were better than him. Derrick was kind of struggling in the beginning, but, we knew it was just a matter of time. And I remember Cal just setting it straight, like, oh, this is my guy, and he's my guy for this reason. And, that just, I always kept that in my head. And I always respected that and admired that about Cal.
Derrick Rose, to me, has completely turned his NBA career around, and I'm glad of that. I mean, this guy was a young MVP, played for the hometown team. That's a lot of pressure. You know it playing for the Knicks. You also know the Chicago landscape because you played at DePaul with Kevin Edwards and all those other guys. Yeah. For you, having been around Derrick in Memphis and then seeing him in the NBA, was there anything about his return that surprised you?
No, nothing. First of all, you may say that, others may say that, but first of all, Derrick Rose is probably one of the best people I've been around in my life. Like, I remember I used to be like, you like Betamax, like they don't make them like you. Like one of the most humble guys, like, I mean, he's incredible. And I've watched him grow and mature. Like Derrick Rose reminded me a lot of me. He wasn't really comfortable in the limelight. He didn't really want to talk and he just wanted to play basketball. But I've watched him grow into, now when you hear him speak, like, he's comfortable. But, Dad, what was the question?
Basically, what I was asking was, are you surprised by like?
Right. So, I'm not surprised. First of all, when he came in the league, he came in like, he did his thing. Obviously, he was an MVP of the league. And then he got hurt. And once he got hurt, Derrick Rose is such a competitor, and he wants to be, the guy. But it's funny because he's that, but he's also unselfish. But once he got injured, I think he pushed a lot. Like I think he was trying to show people he was that MVP. And so when I watched him play, and I always told people he didn't lose a step. He still can jump. He might have lost a little, vertical, I don't know, but he didn't lose much. He just was forcing things. he was trying to do too much. He was running into the lane. He was running into people. He was trying to, he was just overdoing it. And then it came a time where he settled down. And because if you go back to Derrick Rose in Memphis, he was more of a facilitator and a scorer. When he came into the league, he became a scorer that could facilitate. But all he did was kind of go back to, what he was. So now when you watch him play, he's taking quality shots. He's giving guys the ball. Now the court opens up. Once you have that patience, you can see everything. I think there was a stretch where he couldn't see it all because he was pressing. But Derrick Rose is Derrick Rose to this day. He's still one of the best.
I feel like Derrick was ahead of his time, though, if you think about it, because you look at Damian Lillard, and sometimes when I look at him, I'm like, that's Derrick. But then I feel like you look at Marbury, and I feel like Marbury did some things that Lillard does now.
Right.
But I feel like in Marbury's era, in Rose's era, that quality of point guard were perceived as ball hogs. But that's the way the game is played now.
Yeah.
A fair assessment?
Yes, I think so. It's so funny because when you just think about that, I watched Rondo in this era, and I watched him be successful and productive, right? But you get these narratives that can mess the game up, right? A hooper is a hooper, a player is a player. If you can impact the game, whether it's scoring, whether it's facilitating, it is what it is. But we have so many narratives now of what a player should be. But you're right, Steph Marbury, Derrick Rose, Lillard, like very similar. Lillard is probably the better shooter. Steph is probably the next better shooter. D Rose is the scorer, but D Rose is like a triple-double kind of guy. That's his case. I always felt like, he was capable of a triple-double. I can't hear you.
I had the mute button on. So what I was saying was he's like Marbury, Derrick Rose, and Jason Kidd in one. Ironically, he went to the same high school Jason Kidd went to.
Who went to the same high school?
Damian Lillard.
Oh, Damian Lillard. Okay, yeah. Damian Lillard is special. I don't want to go off track, but I just remember me and Mark Jackson sitting at the pre-draft camp with each other and watching him shoot the ball. And all we just talked about was the effortless in his stroke, in his form. You can tell right then and there, he was different.
I got another question, and I want to go into you somewhat, or a lot. You talked about Rajon Rondo. He went to Oak Hill just like you.
One of my favorites.
What'd you say?
One of my favorite players.
Isaiah. I had Isaiah Thomas on a couple of weeks ago, and he said the same thing. And one of the things that I asked Isaiah, and I'm going to straight up ask you, we talked about coaching. For Rondo, why will he instantly become a great head coach in the NBA?
I mean, just IQ and feel. He's a master of the game. He obviously studies the game. He knows everything about anyone else's defense. So he probably knows all the coaches already, right? Because he studies so hard. I can see him walking into a film room and knowing every coach's plays. And he's a point guard, so he had to be a leader. He had to instruct people. I think it's going to be so natural because he's doing it right now. He's the point guard of the world champions, but I can guarantee you he's one of the coaches. Sometimes, people don't want to hear that, but we're coaches on the court. If you're playing 10, 15, 17, 20 years and you're a point guard and you're playing at a high level, you're a coach. You have to control the game, you have to control the huddle, you have to control the locker room. There's so many things, so I think it's a natural. It's going to be a natural progression with him.
So last fall I sat down with Dwayne Wade, and one of the things that he said and Nancy Lieberman said to me as well was, she just marveled at the fact that LeBron and Rondo were both teammates on the floor. It just the IQ conversation is often used. I as I watch him as a point guard, and I look at LeBron as pretty much a 6'8" point guard. I didn't play, but I'm an observer, and I've been around the game for a long time, as you know. But there's something that I've always been confused about, and you as a point guard, I think you can answer this. So when I look at Rondo, and I look at Kyrie, and I look at Tim Hardaway, you look at Tim Hardaway in Miami when he played alongside Anthony Mason, who is considered a point forward. Pat Riley utilized him in that role. You look at LeBron as a point forward, but then you look at Kyrie playing next to him, primary ball handler who handles the ball. For you specifically, when you have a guy that you play alongside with that controls the tempo of the game as well as you as a point guard, is that really a big of adjustment for you? Not throwing anybody on the bus, I've just always been curious. Is that an adjustment for somebody who's used to having the ball in their hand?
No, because I think if you have great IQ players, high IQ players, they'll figure it out. You know what I mean? And they'll share the ball handling. I think Kyrie, when you talk about Kyrie and LeBron, it's a little different. Kyrie has a trigger, so Kyrie can play both of those positions, and they can kind of switch back and forth. But I always said, like, if I was a college coach, or if I was a college coach, I would try to have 2 point guards. Like, I would never mind having 2 point guards on the floor, because they just see the game. They can control the game. Guards, wings, guys who can make plays, they're the ones who win games. So there's never too much of IQ on the court. It might be a problem if neither one of them could shoot. But, as far as just IQs, you want the more IQs on the court, the better.
You were drafted by the hometown Knicks. In 1988, you were the 19th overall pick. I'm curious to know, we talked about Derrick Rose playing for the home team. How much were you hiding from family ticket requests when you played for the Knicks?
I wasn't. That was the best part of being in New York.
Okay.
To have my family and friends to be able to come to the games and know they were at the games, and know after the game I'm going to go catch up with them. I can see them whenever I want to see them. Like, that was the best part. So I had no problems with that. I did have to get a lot of tickets, but I had no problems with that. I love that part. I love that.
Was the ticket the way it is now, where you get like 2 complimentary and then people trade off? Was that still the thing back then? How did it work when you played?
Yeah, you would try to steal some tickets from others if they weren't using them. You go to the media or the ticket person and try to get some extras, but ultimately you're gonna pay. You're gonna pay for some tickets. But I had, like I said, I have my parents there, my brothers there, my boys there. Like, you couldn't beat that. And then I'll be in the garden and I'll see so many people that I know. You know what I mean? So it was like being at home. It was like being around the way. So I enjoyed that.
Do you remember your first game as a Knick, the day leading up to it and everything that was going on with the first home game? Do you remember it?
I do not remember that, right? I don't even know who we played. I do not remember that.
Okay.
I do remember this. This is my first recollection. I remember playing the Nets. And I'm trying to think of the guard's name, but it was this cockstrong guard. I think he played at Phoenix. He played with Phoenix at one time. I can't think of his name, but I never forget that because he was so strong. And I was trying to figure out how to maneuver against him, because I knew back then, it was a lot more physical.
Mm-hmm.
So they could put their arm on you, they could put their hand on you. When you're out on the perimeter, they'll take that hand and try to guide you a certain way. So you had to be able to maneuver, back up, make a move. So I just never forget that game was challenging because I had to learn that and understand that dynamic of I got this grown man guarding me with grown man strength. Now my skill and quickness is my advantage, and now I had to figure out how to maneuver against him as the game went on. But this is what I remember with the Knicks. And I always tell people this. and this was the best feeling ever. So Mark would start, and you have your rotation. So Mark would start, and I would always come in at the end of the first. Then I want to say at the end of the second. So a lot of times, the last shot for the first quarter or half, I had the ball in my hands.
Mm-hmm.
And Rick Pitino would clear it out. So now just imagine that I'm from New York, I'm from the playgrounds, and family, friends, other people I know. And
You showing off.
I'm showing off. No, for real. Like I got the ball in my hand for the last shot, and Pitino is telling everybody to clear it out, and the crowd is starting to roar, rev up, and now I got the ball. So now I'm on West 4th, or I'm in Mitchell, and I never forget that. That was like the best feeling because I'm a rookie, and now you put me in this spotlight, like this is your, that was me. I was getting that, and I never forget that. Like that was one of the best feelings ever.
I didn't fall in love with the game until 91. However, because of my family knows your family and just how I know the game and being around it, I knew your impact, and I knew it particularly in watching your Blazers days and your Bullets days and / Wizards days. But I gotta ask this question about the Knicks. When you look at Mark Jackson and yourself, you've talked about it on my podcast, Scoopy Radio. Who would you compare? Do you think it would be a fair assessment to call the two guard lineup between you and Mark had you guys started together? Do you think you guys would have done as much damage or been comparable to CJ McCollum and Damian Lillard?
I think we'd have been like Earl Monroe and Clyde Frazier. like I just think I think Mark was Clyde and I was the Pearl. In my mind. Like me and Mark, we talk about that from time to time. I just wish, and they couldn't see it back then. Now they would have done it. But again, so we just was talking about IQs. So you have Mark and myself on the court. Those are two high IQs. Like if you can even go back to the games that when they did play us, like, we getting up and down the court, making plays for everybody. We got the crowd going. And the crowd wanted it. They wanted it more. But back then it was a point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, center. And, they weren't going to play 2-point guard. But I wish we could have stuck around longer. I wish we could have played together longer. I think it would have been incredible.
I was 7 in 92, and I'm not sure. You played with the Blazers from 92 to 96. Were you on that championship team against the Bulls? You came the year after.
I came after the 2 championship runs. So they lost to the Pistons and the Bulls. I don't know which order.
Right.
I came the year after. And so the interesting thing, I came the year after. They signed me as a free agent. I want to say they signed Mario Eli as a free agent. So they had their whole starting team back. Off the bench, it was Cliff Robinson, God bless, Mario Eli, Mark Bryan, and myself. So we were like 9 deep. And we started off like 8-0. And then Clyde Drexler got hurt. And then, Clyde Drexler, that changed the dynamics of the team. But I was so looking forward to that year, with that group. Because we used to come off the bench, me, Mario, Cliff, and Mark. And that was a tough bench to have to go after, to go against rather. And that's one of those moments I'm like, I wish, Clyde didn't get hurt. I think we could have made it back to the finals.
When you look at Clyde Drexler, I feel like he was grossly underpaid in an era that was Michael's era. Help me understand, when you look at Drexler, if Michael was the top 2 guard in the NBA, was Drexler second?
I got to go back and think about it, but I'm sure, yeah.
What made him special?
Say that again?
What made him special?
IQ, I mean, he was obviously, his athleticism, but Clyde, I don't think he gets enough credit for his IQ. Like when he had the ball on the court, you better have your eyes open. Like he's going to make the right play. He's going to anticipate it. He's going to create for others, and then he has this will. Like Clyde is a stubborn kind of guy, which all most great players are. But like he'll will the team. There was times where, it's like just give me the ball, get out the way. But if you open, I'll give it to you. But I'm gonna carry this team. But I think his IQ is underrated.
Right. Who plays like Clyde Drexler today?
I'm bad at that. I'm bad at the comparison game. Like I don't even, usually that it either pops real quick but I don't know.
That's fair. That's fair. Cliff Robinson is a guy that we lost. Funny story. So, I got my start with the Nets at 12. And I remember the old media room at the Meadowlands? Yeah. That's where all you guys would go to still make plates and then go back in the visitors' locker room. So I remember before a game, my man came in, literally made like 3 plates.
That sounds like me.
Were you that bad back then?
Yeah, definitely.
What? To me, I feel like Cliff was ahead of the game. When you look at guys that literally play 4 or 5 positions, I mean, this was pre Kevin Garnett. He was after Bob McAdoo. This was like Lamar Odom was coming in the league a couple years later, but
after Derrick Coleman.
Yes.
Let's not forget about my man DC, because he was one of the originators, and he was a killer, and so skilled, and probably more skilled than we were talking about. He handled the ball, make plays like a true guard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because when I look at Derrick Coleman, I see Chris Webber and Anthony Davis.
Yeah, but Webb, you know how I feel about C. Webb.
Yeah.
Derrick Coleman probably was a more natural ball handler.
Okay, that's fair.
Than both. Now, C. Webb is, I'm the biggest C. Webb fan.
Was your teammate?
He did everything, but Derrick Coleman probably was a more natural ball handler.
Yeah, and when I watched those Nets days with him and Kenny Anderson, they had something special. They were just young.
Yeah. They were young. But they were Kenny, Derrick, and Petrovic. Like that was ridiculous. But I'm a fan of all 3. Derrick Coleman and Kenny Anderson. Now that we brought his name up, like 2 of my favorite players and people.
But you know who I think gets overlooked? 2 people: Stacey Augmon and Glenn Robinson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I feel like Glenn Robinson was a natural small forward, and so was Stacey Augmon.
Mm-hmm. Two different players though, guys. Glenn Rice was. I'm sorry, you said Glenn Robinson.
Glenn Robinson
was, he's more of a bona fide scorer. He's a bucket. Put him in the mid post. He's facing up. One dribble pull ups and all that. Like he was just a natural scorer. Stacey Augmon was just like an impact player, played everything. Played defense, finisher, not a great shooter, tough, good leader and all of that. But they're definitely 2 different type players.
Rod, you mentioned Mitchell, and for those who are tardy to the party, Mitchell houses in the Bronx, is where you grew up, and New York City learned who you were. You were thorough in every borough of the city, but you're always tied to Derrick Irving, who was a star in his own right at Boston University. You're one of your closest friends. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about Brother Gary, who's one of the only Black editors of that I can think of that was in the newspaper business. But then, you talk about Mitchell and Kyrie Irving, West Orange, New Jersey native by way of the Bronx. His father and you and him have this special bond. I got to ask this question. Why do people villainize Kyrie Irving so much?
Well, first of all, Gary Howard, big ups. That's my guy. It's my big bro. I speak to him all the time. One of the best minds. So I got a big up Gary.
Yes,
And
sir.
yeah, but and Dedrick, we've known each other since third grade. We've spent like
Mhm.
almost every day of our lives together growing up. So I mean, that's my brother. That's family. And Kyrie. As far as Kyrie, man, I don't really get into that. I kind of try to stay away from that because it just doesn't like. I know Kai. I know his family. I know where he's from. I know his cloth. Uh, and Kyrie's just different, right? He thinks different, and I think people, sometimes people don't like that. We live in a world now where everybody thinks if you say this, I'm supposed to go along with you, and if I'm against that, then I'm wrong, and
Mhm.
you feel like you have to ostracize me or you have to put me down because I'm not speaking the same language you're speaking. Kyrie's different. You can just watch him play basketball and tell he's different. He thinks different. You can't do the things he does on the court without being creative. So his mind is different. His thoughts and what he think of certain things may be different. And so a lot of times I'm I'm one of those people that I'm not too much into trying to dissect the person that everybody's talking about. I'm usually thinking about the person who's talking about the person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm like, a lot of times it's like I try to think of their reasoning or why they doing that. Because he's who he
Hmm.
is. You know what I mean? He's an incredible basketball player. He's won a championship, perennial All-Star, well, surefire Hall of Fame, smart, intelligent, good looking, obviously he's made all kinds of money, does plenty of things in the community. So what's the issue? Like you don't agree with whatever you don't agree with? Like it's hard for me sometimes to see like successful people being chopped down. It's like you become successful and then it's all this judgment, right? And
Yeah.
then it's judgment, and I don't mean to say this in the wrong way, but you judge by people who haven't accomplished what you've accomplished.
Yep.
And to me, that becomes frustrating, but then it's like you can't give your energy that. And
Yeah.
that's my conversation with Kai. Like, you can't give your energy to that because it doesn't matter. Because he's solid. Like, he's solid. What has he done wrong? But not agree with maybe what some people said may have different views. I mean, he's one of the top players, and I'm not even gonna get into to the numbers because they'll say I'm
They're
favoritism,
subjective.
but you know
Right.
he's one of the. I'll say this to you, and people can say whatever they want to say. If you're talking about skill and talent, you have to tell me another player in NBA history who's as skilled and talented as Kai is. Like you have to give me, Isaiah, the great Isaiah Thomas, who you said you just had. Now I've seen him, like I've seen him before the little bad boy image.
Yeah.
When he first came with the Pistons, I've seen him in Chicago at the Push Excel. So I've seen Isaiah do some things that I don't think a lot of people have seen. So if you want to name Isaiah skill wise, but other than that, it's hard.
What did you make of Kyrie's first season in Brooklyn? He was short lived because he got hurt, but he put on a show.
Yeah, he put on his first game, he put on his show. But I mean, I don't. I mean, it's Kai being Kai. When he's on the court, that's Kai being Kai. Like he's gonna, he has that embarrassment factor. Like, some people can give you 30, and you may not. It's a good 30, and it's like wow, he had 30, but then there's that other 30 that's like, that goddamn 30. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I don't. There's not a whole lot of explanation to that. On the court, he's incredible. Like his
Mhm.
talent, his scoring ability, his creativity. To be able to maneuver on the court, the way he does, I mean, it's special.
You moved on the court like a daggone ballerina that with a basketball in their hand. I know everybody tries to make those comparisons, and I think that you both are your own player.
Definitely.
If you had Kyrie's speed, what would your career, his speed and some of the things that he's able to do, what would your career have been like when you played?
I don't know if I'm like slower than Kai. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I think the speed is equal.
Okay.
I even like, even getting to the basket and finishing, like, those things can be compared. But I think Kyrie, first of all, he shoots the ball like way better than I could ever shoot the ball with range. And, I was a mid-range shooter. But his ball handling is different. I reacted to the defense. So, and I can maneuver and get to where I want to get to. But he just does it differently. Like, it's so, he's almost able to play with you and then do what he wants to do. So I just think his skill level is unmatched. My skill level wasn't his skill level. But, I see similarities in some things, but his skill level is there was a time where people would be like, man, y'all play it like he plays like you. And I used to stick my chest out. And then when I saw him, then when he got to Cleveland and I watched him play, I'm like, man, don't even say that. Like,
Yeah.
It's not even close, man. Like, things he do, I can only dream of doing. Like, he's different.
Rod, I remember the 96 playoffs when you were a member of the Washington Bullets, and you went toe-to-toe with the Bulls. And if I'm not mistaken, it was you, Juwan Howard, Chris Webber, Chris Whitney. You guys were a loaded team. What do you remember most about your Bullets days?
I remember Chris Webber and Juwan Howard. Like those were those two guys, man. They were so competitive. That coming from the Fab Five, and I remember watching them play and their swag and everything. Like, that was it. Like, we played the Bulls. Those guys are hyped and amped and competitive, young guys. It just was a pleasure playing with those guys. And then Calvert Chaney, Chris Whitney. I don't want to miss anybody. Tracy Murray was there. He was an incredible shooter. Harvey Grant, Ben Wallace, who I don't even understand why we traded him. Like, that was one of the worst days of, like, I went in Wes Unsell's office and was like, Ben? I said, Ben? I said, Ben? And he said, well, we had, I said, Ben?
Yeah.
So, but it was just great times, man. Like, we had a really good team. I don't think we stayed together long enough, but I just remember, C. Webb and Juwan really, like, to me, they were the engine. Like, they were the, like, like coming to a game and getting ready. I'll never forget games. I remember we played Garnett and Steph, and I'll just never forget how, like, amped and hyped that was. C. Webb and Garnett talking garbage to each other, me and Steph going back and forth. But those guys are super ultra competitors and talented. C. Webb, who should be in the Hall of Fame, I mean, one of the most gifted guys I've been on the court with, stat stuffer, rebounds, assists, block shots, steals, whatever, did it all. And it showed because when he left, we were different. And every team he's gone to since, he's made an impact on every team he's gone to. And when he leaves, that team gets worse. And I think we start talking underrated, undervalued. Like, C. Webb is that. Like, the fact that he's not in the Hall of Fame, to me, is like, it's just not right. Like, he's incredible. And he was such a killer. Like, his attitude and his fierceness on the court.
Yeah, no, and when you talk about Chris Webber, as it relates to just being underrated, I feel like we're just in an era where, and Shaq kind of broke it down for me on my podcast, Scoopy Radio, back in the spring. I asked him in an era where Michael and himself and Kobe were like king, Reggie Miller, Gary Payton, and Hakeem Olajuwon get overlooked.
Mm-hmm.
And he said it's almost like when you go to McDonald's, and he wasn't throwing shade, he was just using this as an example. You got to be careful because people pick up things and it doesn't always get allocated. But when you go to McDonald's, the top thing on the menu is the Big Mac. But then you have other options if you don't like the Big Mac. You have chicken nuggets, you have the filet of fish. I don't want to give McDonald's too much promo, but you have the chicken sandwich. You have all these different things. And I feel like when you talk about Chris Webber, I don't know if he's a milkshake. I don't know if he's the fries. I don't know if he's that. But respectfully, I feel like it gets lost in translation, his impact, because people have their personal gripes, but also I feel like Kevin Garnett came along and people get amnesia.
I mean, I don't know. Whatever it is, he's up there, you know, and I'm glad I had a chance to be a part of it, and I saw it and I've seen it. But if you talk about Dirk and Garnett, you know, you got to see Webb has to be in that conversation. Like, I mean, that's not even, I mean, that's easy work.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and you know, you talk about Gary and Reggie. I know, you know what I mean? Everybody, you know, this league is going on so long. And as you get older, you know, people forget it's the new group. But, you know, history tells the story.
Tell me something. When you played in the playoffs for the Bullets against the Bulls, you going to DePaul kind of made it a home game when you played at the United Center. In the same, maybe not in the same way. Well, no, because it's the playoffs. They were cheering against you.
I was getting talked about on the sidelines.
What? You held your own against Michael. I was watching some video the other day. Rod, you wasn't scared of Michael at all. What is it like going toe-to-toe with probably the greatest player of all time?
Well, I hate that word. And scared would be like, that's like the craziest word to me, you know, competing against somebody on the court. And I think and I don't know, I can't speak for everybody else, but, you know, when you're in the NBA and you're playing and you're competing, others look at Michael some kind of way, you know, we have to look at him differently. Now, understanding who he is now, I ain't going to sit there and act like I don't know who Mike is, but you're competing and you're trying to win. So, and then I'm a point guard. MJ is, you know, two guard, probably could play small forward. So, and even because MJ, you know, I used to have to go against MJ, Scotty, Ron Harper, you know, then there was Steve Kerr, BJ, Randy Brown, and they would switch different guys off me. When it came down to the end of the game, though, MJ would be on me. So I had to learn in those games, because one thing I have to be honest about is in the half court, with length and me not being the greatest shooter, I got to figure this thing out, because I got to maneuver. Because what they would do is, in moments, they would put length on me. And so they are able to gap me, right? And then able to recover, you know, if I shoot. Because, you know, I mean, they would prefer me to shoot than get in the lane. Mm-hmm. So I had to maneuver and I had to learn, against the Bulls, even Scotty, I had to catch him in the open court. So a lot of times I want the ball. I want you to give it to me quick, and I want to do something early, because the defense is not set and, you know, the court is spaced. And so I would try to attack those guys more in transition. Now on the, you know, in half court, it could be tough at times. And so I had to maneuver that. But I was a penetrator and I understood angles. So I still was able to attack. But it was just interesting because there would be 6 different guys on me when we played the Bulls. I would see a lot of different looks. But I enjoyed the competition. MJ's, you know, he's one of the greatest. And so, you know, all eyes when he's playing, you know, all eyes are on that basketball court. So, you know, you want to be prepared, you want to be ready, you want to compete. And, you know, I mean, quite honestly, you lost a lot of times, you know, but you wanted to compete and you go in the game trying to win. So, you know, my eyes looking at MJ may be different than others.
The tape on the wrist is making a comeback. You wore tape on the wrist. Jamal Murray was wearing tape on the wrist. What do you make of his game?
Jamal Murray is incredible. Like, he's a player, like great shooter, poised, and then he gets to the basket. Like, I've watched him of late. I didn't know he was like a finisher like that. Like, he finishes well. Uses the backboard and angles and all that. So he's incredible. He's only going to get better and better. But I think his coming out party was in the bubble. For me, from watching him, and he's only going to get better. But he's a great shooter. He can play in the ball screens, and he's a finisher. So, and he's clutch.
Kemba Walker is from the Bronx, just like you. Do you like his fit in the Boston Celtics system?
Yeah, I think Kemba can fit anywhere. I think Kemba is a hooper. He's like, he just hoops. He wants to win. He wants to play. He's confident. So I think Kemba can play anywhere. I think Boston, I don't know. I think I would try to stick with that nucleus for another year or two because they're knocking at the door. I think they just needed experience, and I think now Kemba has an extra year, right? I think he can, he can, he'll be more comfortable. And I'm not sure if Kemba was a little hurt during the playoffs. So I don't know if we saw the true Kemba. But, I think Boston is knocking at the door. And I think the more players that can make plays, you got Kemba, you got Tatum, you got Brown. I think they have a lot of guys who can, at the end of the game, you can give them the ball and they can make plays.
The Lakers are the NBA champions. This offseason, they're going to make some moves, possibly, but pretty much the same team will be intact. What are you looking forward to in a season that's likely to get ready to start in about a little over a month?
Man, I'm just looking to watch basketball. I'm looking to watch another season. And I miss basketball every time it's gone. Obviously, to me, the biggest story, is obviously the Lakers. What are they going to do? Can they repeat? But then you got over there in the East, in New York, that Brooklyn team. I think, KD and Kyrie, I think everybody has to be waiting to see, that. And, they have a lot of talent on that team. And they could probably use it two ways. I mean, they can keep the talent, but they also, they're in a good position to make moves if they wanted to. So I like the Nets. I mean, Kyrie and KD, they're about to take over New York a little bit. So I'm interested in Milwaukee. I'm interested to see what they're going to do, the changes they're going to make, because they've been kind of knocking at the door, but it seems like they need a little extra, probably another playmaker, someone else who can score and get Giannis off the ball, because he does a lot of things from the top, and in the playoffs it closes in, and he's not a great shooter. So you kind of have to move him around the court a little bit. So I'm interested to see what happens with that.
$1 million question. I like Chris Paul. Do you think he'd be a better fit if Nas made a song called "If I Ruled the World"? If you ruled the world for the day, would you prefer to see Chris Paul? If he's traded, would you prefer to see him in New York with the Knicks or with the Bucks playing alongside Giannis?
Well, I think I'll just look at it. I mean, if he's looking to move on and championship aspirations, it's obviously the Bucks. He gives them someone else who can make plays and can score the ball down the stretch. But the Knicks can be intriguing because they're going to make some changes, obviously, and he can probably not do what he did in OKC, which was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've always been a Chris Paul fan, but when I saw him do, him doing what he did in OKC, first of all, accepting that after coming from Houston and saying, I know this is different. I don't know how this is going to go, but I'm going to dig in and I'm going to make these guys better. And for them to do what they did says a lot about him. And maybe that's his thought process if he wants to go to New York, to kind of help that franchise start moving on toward a playoff position and maybe his future after basketball. So I don't know. I can see him in both spots.
Last question. You are respected locally, internationally, all over the globe, respected. You have a role with the NBA in the NBA's G League. You've coached at Kentucky, or you've been an assistant coach in Memphis, Kentucky. Your son is the man. He's playing college basketball. You're known. You've gotten the respect of Trae Young. You've given him advice, and you're all over. What's the one thing that you want to do that's a passion project through basketball that you haven't done yet that you still want to do?
I'm doing what I want to do now. I'm just working in the G League and working with Team Ignite and watching these young guys grow and get better. That's it. I want to be a part of basketball. I want to make an impact. I want to share my experiences. I think I have a lot of knowledge. I have a lot of experience, from the good to bad, the ugly to great. Experience is the best teacher. So I want to be able to give that back and make an impact and do something different, do something special. So I'm always forward thinking. I'm always thinking about things that have to do with basketball that, can be unique, help change the game. That's why I love doing what I'm doing now, because it's different. I think it's going to be a part of history, and it'll make an impact on young people and give them an option. And so I don't know if I can pinpoint one thing. Being in basketball is really what it's like a big part of my life. I've done it all my life. So if I'm impacting basketball in any kind of way, I'm sad. Well, I don't want to say satisfied, because I don't think I'm ever satisfied. But I'm in basketball, so I'll keep growing, I'll keep learning. My mind is always open, and just trying to move forward and get better.
You heard it first. The good news is this, Mr. Strickland. You are off the hot seat. I hope I didn't too much, but really and truly, you are a basketball mind that, I mentioned Reggie Miller, I mentioned Gary Payton, I mentioned Chris Webber. To be honest with you, brother, I think you're getting your roses now, but I think your impact in basketball has not always been credited the right way. We know who you are. You've been in rap songs, but at the same time, I think that this generation's of basketball watchers need to continue to watch you and what you do, because you've given a lot to the game.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that. I've done this for a long time, and I've been blessed, to still be in basketball. So I'm good.
That's it. All right, y'all heard it first. Rod Strickland, NBA legend. We're over and out.